Good evening, everyone. It's Gina with Healing Strategies Rise Up from Trauma. Thank you so much for being here this evening. On tonight's episode, we will be discussing how trauma presents itself in the mind and body. What I would like to start off saying is thank you, everyone, for being here. I really appreciate week after week that you come and you patronize and you kind of learn and listen and things like that. So I really appreciate each and every one of you. If you would please hit the like button, the share button, and subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, I would really, really appreciate that. That would be amazing as well. Kind of helps me reach other trauma survivors that may need some self-help healing strategies, and that's exactly why we do this. Hi, Michael. Thank you for tuning in. And so tonight, as you all know, everything that we present here is pertaining to trauma survivors, and it's pertaining to healing. That's why it's called Healing Strategies. But when it comes to trauma, there's so many different traumas that we deal with. And so tonight, how trauma presents itself in the mind and body, I want to go back over really quick and reiterate some of the different traumas that we as adults, as children. There are a lot of different traumas that we that we can have. Sorry, I was trying to think of the right word, but I guess there wasn't one. So different traumas that affect people in different ways, and so one of them is like acute trauma, and this is from like a single accident, disaster, like maybe a sudden loss. And so that's what acute trauma is. Chronic trauma is something that's repeated and prolonged, kind of like childhood trauma, where there are childhood trauma, war veterans, from being in a war zone, distressing events, things like that. So acute and chronic, they're two different ones. Then you have complex trauma, and that involves exposure to multiple traumatic events that invade your interpersonal nature, which is your interpersonal skills, interpersonal bridge, which is where the other person obviously has taken control. So that's more of your childhood trauma, childhood abuse, domestic violence, things like that. Developmental trauma, that's where it occurs in the periods of developing as a child. It's often affecting the emotional and the psychological aspect of growth. So that's where a lot of the, you'll hear me talk periodically. You've heard me talk about it as well, about the prefrontal cortex, what trauma does. And not only does that affect people that are childhood trauma survivors, but also veterans that have been to war as well. That can actually affect the brain and the prefrontal cortex and things like that as well. And it is typically linked to developmental trauma, is typically linked to neglect or abuse in childhood as well. Secondary trauma, this is known as vicarious trauma. A lot of people don't realize this. And so secondary trauma is a huge thing. And why I bring that up, I mean, I have a list, but why I bring that up is that when we tell our story or we tell of a traumatic experience that happened to us, sometimes we have to think before we say things. Sometimes we don't. I'm one of them. I just blurt it out. But sometimes we have to think before we say things, and here's why. Because sometimes the person on the receiving end can't handle the descriptions and can't handle the depth of what we're telling them. Therefore, they become traumatized. And so that's secondary trauma. It's indirectly exposing your trauma onto somebody else and giving them too much information, too much knowledge. This is a lot of, let me see, first responders, childhood trauma survivors like myself. My story is very, very deep. There's a lot of layers. There's a lot of things. And so when I share my story, I try to take out all of the pieces that would really cause a lot of the secondary trauma. So collective trauma, historical trauma is the intergenerational trauma. We're seeing that today as, our ancestors, going from, great grandparents, great grandparents, all the way down. Um, they're, seeing what they did, and how the cycle just trickles to each and every one of us. And then, um, for instance, if you come from a family of, maybe, I'm trying to think, because I don't like to say things and then kind of instill or put things in people's minds, but let's just be realistic. Let's say you come from a family of alcoholics. Yes, there is a direct link to, that it probably started way back in history. And so, there's an intergenerational trauma that trickles down from, great grandparents, grandparents, parents, you, siblings, or not siblings, but children, da 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 da. That's why we try to stop the cycle with us, because if we can stop it, it'll stop and break that cycle, break that curse, break that intergenerational trauma. And hopefully our kids, grandkids, and all of that, it won't manifest in them, if that makes sense. Medical trauma, if you've had surgeries, if you've had tests done, things like that, where, um, you didn't, the doctors didn't listen to you. They had told you different things, and, it kind of makes you look at yourself in a different way. And, um, to give you an idea, I hate going to the doctor, because I feel like I'm never seen, never heard, and so they always want to brush off, the different things that I tell them and things like that too, and it kind of drives me bananas. And then I hate when they start throwing in a lot of the other medical, unnecessary garbage about, my weight with my BMI and all of that stuff, and it just drives me bonkers, because I've said it, before, and I'll say it again. Um, I am probably one of the healthiest people at my weight, and I'm not very heavy, but I just hate that they go by the BMI charts. And so, like I've always told my doctor, you give me somebody that's 90 pounds or 100, 120 pounds. Could you, I mean, if you've seen me before, you would know, I would not look good at 120 pounds. And that's realistically what they want me to do. So at 120 pounds, yeah, I might be a tad healthier, but come along with that, there's a lot of health risk if you don't take care of yourself. And so I'm happy where I'm at. I'm healthy where I'm at. And so, when they say heart disease, lung disease, all of this stuff, it drives me absolutely bananas when they start implementing all of that and really putting that into our brains and into our mindset. Like, oh my goodness, I have to be the slim Jimmy, and for society, and it's all a society thing. And so I'm just over it. So, I'm one that I totally hate going to the doctor. I hate when they call me and they're like, oh, you have to come in for your physical. No, I don't even want to go. So, kind of recap, there's acute, chronic, complex trauma, developmental trauma, secondary trauma, intergenerational trauma, and medical trauma. So there's all different kinds of trauma that we can endure. I've endured, a couple of these, actually a few of these, myself. So what I want to talk about is how trauma prevents itself in the mind and body. And this is huge. And so one of the areas that I want to talk about, is Broca's area. If you're a trauma survivor and you're wondering what that is, let me kind of tell you what that is. So the left hemisphere of the prefrontal cortex, this is your prefrontal cortex in here. So the left hemisphere, it would be over here. And so, it plays a crucial role in language development, processing, and things like that. And so when a trauma survivor comes in, I've been here before. So, so I totally understand. It's that indescribable feeling. So when a trauma survivor comes in and they say to me, I've had trauma, but I can't describe it. When that happens in that moment, then I understand that their prefrontal cortex is not working the way that it should. Because in that moment, trauma survivors, when they're, Broca's area of their prefrontal cortex, that is an indication that that's not working. It's not working properly, because if it was, they would be able to describe exactly what ended up taking place as far as feelings and emotions and everything like that. So when a client comes in and tells me that, again, that they've endured trauma, but it's an indescribable feeling, that's how I know that something ended up taking place, and which disrupted their prefrontal cortex. And you'll hear me talk about that a lot because trauma survivors don't understand that when you do endure something horrific as war, childhood trauma, developmental trauma, those types of things, going into child abuse, domestic violence, and all that, and it does have a negative effect on your prefrontal cortex. It can come back online, and there's movements you can do, and it's called trauma informed movements. There's a ton of different videos on YouTube. So if you struggle with wondering how your brain is operating, I would definitely try those videos and kind of see how they would work for you and how they would help repair your brain, because your prefrontal cortex is for logical thinking, executive functioning, again, for language processing, speech production. There's a lot of things that happen within this region. And so if that region is not working properly, comprehension, that was another thing, comprehension, if you're not comprehending, if you're, and things like that, that's something that you may want to try if you notice that within yourself, which builds the mindfulness awareness piece of trying to figure out if your brain is actually working to the capacity that it should be. And so again, that's called trauma informed movements, and that's another good one that you can do. That I love, and we've talked about this before. Is the opposites. How can you get your brain kind of up and thinking and doing the opposite? If you're right-handed, try to do everything with the left hand. And so what you're doing is you are building awareness, and you're kind of waking up your brain a little bit. We do the drawing. I know I've talked about this before, but we do the drawing. And basically what we're doing with the drawing is we are repairing and rewiring your neural pathways, which is another good way to, and it's a more gentle, fun way, I guess, in a way. I mean, it's fun in a way, especially if you like to draw, even if you don't like to draw. But what I have found is that I would prefer doing my drawing and repairing and rewiring my neural pathways than I would between sitting in a coaching session for 60, 75 minutes or a therapy session. When I can draw and tap into my subconscious, unconscious, and conscious all in the same session and know that it's working and see the results, that's what I'm going to continue to do. So, all right. So let's talk about the various ways that trauma presents itself in the body. Muscle tension. Now, please note, before I go through these, let me just tell you, sorry, my allergies are really bothering me. So that's why my nose is driving me bananas. So I apologize. We live in farm country. So the farmers are taking off everything under the sun, and my allergies are tenfold. So I'm going absolutely bananas with my nose, constantly itchy. So I apologize. Some of these things I just want to let you know, because I'm a coach, so I'm not a doctor, and I can't prescribe and cure and all of that good stuff and diagnose. But the things that I'm presenting can be trauma that presents itself in the body. Is it, can all of this? There are things that can be something different. They can be, there could be something serious underlining. So what I'm telling you is, yes, these are the ways that trauma presents itself. But this is just there can be an underlying issue besides trauma. So if you do have any of these things, make sure that you do go get checked, if you feel the need to. So muscle tension, chronic tension, especially if you have it in the neck, the shoulders, the back, because these are the areas, especially the middle back, where your shoulder blades are, shoulders, and your neck. That is the three areas that you normally hold on to stress. Those are the three areas that, again, a lot of the muscle tension, the chronic tension will stay. And so I've noticed, since I've been doing a lot more of my, my healing and on my healing journey and stuff, that my pain is right below my shoulder blades. So my pain has shifted. And so I hate I like going to the chiropractor. I like that they use this new gadget, but I don't like the snap, crackle, pop. So I try to avoid going, although I should, because it does feel better when I get done. But just to give you an idea, so my pain has moved to just below my shoulder area. So pain, unexplained pain. If you have headaches, joint pain, let me see, shoulders and back, just something that when you have gone to get MRIs or CAT scans or anything like that, and you're like, okay, they can't figure out where the pain's coming from. It could be linked to unresolved trauma, unhealed trauma sitting in the body, because that's exactly what we're talking about, is how trauma is presented in the body. And so it stays trapped in there, kind of like we talk about the body keeps the score. It stays trapped in the cells of the body. And this is all the cells. Fatigue. If you have chronic fatigue, if you're extremely exhausted on the verge of having adrenal fatigue, then I would highly suggest that you go and you really do get checked, because adrenal fatigue is really nothing to mess around with, especially if your stress levels are through the roof. And how many of us in today's society, our stress levels are probably shooting through the roof. I know when I did my cortisol levels, they were like off the charts, and I already knew that. But my cortisol levels were like, I don't even know. They might have been like, maybe they had to be under 50. Mine were probably like 500. That's just how it goes. But all jokes aside, seriously though, if you have chronic fatigue and you feel like you can't do day-to-day activities, if you're just really, really have to get on yourself and you just tire out easily, I would really listen to your body and either rest, or really consider going and getting checked again to make sure that there's nothing more nothing further happening that can actually lead to adrenal fatigue or anything like that. Digestive issues, if you have IBS, if you have excessive bloating, changes in appetite, any type of gastro problems, what ends up happening is that when we have trauma of some sort, we usually live in a tense state. And so that's why there's a lot of fibromyalgia, there's a lot of MS, there's a lot of lupus, because as our body starts releasing and healing on this healing journey, recovery, when we try to relax, our nerves and muscles don't know how, hence why we start doing, why we start having a lot of issues, because when we're trying to relax, our nerves and muscles have been tense our entire life. They don't know how to relax. So as we're relaxing, they're living in this state frame of mind going, I don't know what relaxation is. Hence why there's a lot of inflammation, a lot of things that take place. So if you do have a lot of gastro issues and they can't figure out what's wrong, again, that could be related to trauma, because trauma does lead to, those types of things. This is what Sly says. If I could sleep better at night, the 45 minutes to an hour at a time sucks. And it does. And so, we're just going to have to work on you to figure out what is causing your insomnia and things like that too. And, maybe we need to give you some oils. We'll put some sleep night oils on your feet or something like that. And we'll figure it out. But it does. I mean, when you can't sleep and insomnia really sucks. And that's another thing. It's, you kind of brought it up. So let's talk about it. Insomnia. That's another trauma response. A lot of people that have endured certain types of trauma don't feel safe to sleep. I'm not saying Sly that's, his issue, but going from my own personal experiences, there's things that I don't like. And so sleeping for me comes few and far between. I don't like to sleep at night. I like to sleep during the day. And the reason being is all of my trauma happened at night. And so during the day, I'm not as tense because I feel more safer when there's sunshine, when there's light in the room, and know that I'm safe, that I'm okay. And that is a trauma response that I'm trying to get rid of, or trying to overcome, not get rid of, but trying to overcome. Another response that I have, and maybe you can relate to this, is it can be 150 degrees outside and I'm having some sort of a cover or a sheet on me, because that is my protector. That's something that protects me. And so if you can relate, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so my husband used to always be like, man, it's 100 degrees in here. Like, why are you under a blanket? And I would tell him it's my protection. I have to be under a blanket of some sort. I just feel like it's hugging me, it's protecting me, and so whether he understands what that is, I don't know, but that's it. Just makes me feel safe. Um, Hyperarousal. If you have a racing heart, sweaty hands, if you're feeling jumpy, like your body's in fight or flight, that's hyperarousal. When you're in fight or flight, that is another trauma response. And so that's where your nervous system becomes dysregulated, your emotions are dysregulated, and you literally stay in dysregulation. That's when you need to learn a lot of the, not a lot, but you need to learn some coping skills on how to regulate your nervous system or how to co-regulate with your partner. Some people they will. I have animals. My little um, they're over in my corner, so I'm not going to get up and get them. But they're called like my chunky yarn. I couldn't think of what I called them. My chunky yarn animals. And so they carry little small ones, and you can have that, and you can rub it, and you can do whatever you need to. And that kind of what it does is it sends your mind in a different direction. And kind of takes it off what's going on and helps you calm down. You can do the 5-finger breathing. You breathe in, and then you breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. But of course, you don't go that fast. But 5-finger breathing. You can look around the room and say, okay, what is 5 things that I see, 4 things I hear, 3 things I can touch, 2 things I can eat, and I don't even know what number 1 would be. I don't even know what the other one would be. Taste, smell, taste. I don't remember what the other one would be, but you get the idea of what you do. And so what that does is it's literally taking your mind off what's going on and focuses you back to center. And so regulation and co-regulation, it's totally different. So just so you understand, co-regulation is not the same as codependency at all. So regulation and co-regulation, that is when you're helping somebody else is helping you regulate while you're watching them breathe, or maybe you're watching their heart rate, or sometimes you can see when they're breathing, or you can see their heart. Hopefully it's not like beating really fast, but like my husband does have a fast heartbeat. But so it's things like that you try to mimic. I guess you can't mimic their heart, so it would be their breathing. So sorry. So you would mimic their breathing as long as they're not breathing super fast, because then you don't want to hyperventilate. But watching them, that's co-regulation. Dissociation. Dissociation is when you feel connected from your body. When you go into kind of like a trigger response, or a trauma response, which is triggering, and you dysregulate. We do dysregulation. A lot of people don't realize this, but we do it. But not dysregulation, sorry, dissociation. Ugh. So dissociation is totally different. We dissociate when we're driving. But the dissociation that I'm talking about is when you have like an outer body experience and you have like extreme numbness, and it's kind of like a sense of unreality. So like I'm sitting here, but I literally see myself doing the task. It's kind of like an outer body experience. We do dissociate when we are driving, and all of a sudden we get to just say we're driving from home to work, and we're like, man, how did I get here? I don't remember stopping at any other red lights or stop signs. And you're like, man, how did I get here? Well, that's because your body's familiar. You're familiar because you take that way all the time. And so Nick, he went uptown with Landon. So you better text him, because I didn't realize what time it was. He might be at Josh's. I don't know. Better text him and see. I didn't even think about that, Munchkin. He should be back by now. He knows he's supposed to be back by dark. So nothing like scolding your kid on oh, just as you said that. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Okay. So Josh doing yeah. So he left his phone. Yeah. So he's at Josh's. Liv's going to bring him home. Sorry, that was a family thing. Sorry, guys. So dissociation again is where you feel disconnected from your body, have experiencing numbness, sense of unreality, where you're having out of body experiences and things like that. If that is the case and you're experiencing those, you really need to go get professional help. You really need to go see a psychiatrist or a psychologist, because that is something very serious. And here's why. Dissociation, when you're experiencing those things, can lead to a lot more dissociation, which means that when you're driving and you can just have these out of body experiences, and it can be, very catastrophic, and we don't want that to take place. And so what you're doing is you're numbing through the pain, and everything that's coming along with trauma. You're numbing through everything, and so you're dissociating because you don't want to feel the pain. Nobody wants to feel the pain. And so we numb ourselves to the fact that we're having these out of body experiences and we don't even know what's going on. I'm trying to think. Skin conditions. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and things like that too. So skin conditions. So if you have skin conditions like eczema, psoriasis, those are two that are commonly known for trauma survivors. It's a trauma response. And so, those are, stress and trauma together. Breathing issues. Shallow or rapid breathing can occur. So if you have anxiety, panic attacks, a lot of those are related to trauma. And so, shallow breathing, and I did a video on this on my YouTube, and because a lot of people don't realize, when you're sitting there and you're going through a triggering event or things like that, and trauma survivors do it, sometimes we don't breathe. And you may be one of those ones that your brain will say, hey, you need to breathe. And then all of a sudden you breathe, or all of a sudden you just take a deep breath in. In that moment, what's happening is chances are you've held your breath because something stressful, something remembering a traumatic event may have occurred. And so we do tend to hold our breath more. And so breathing exercises, the 5-finger breathing, and that's where you inhale very, very deep. And not only do you want to fill this part, you want to fill way down into your gut. You want your belly to expand, and here's why. If you don't start doing deep breathing exercises and you're a trauma survivor, the lower part of your lungs will stop functioning properly, which means that part of your lungs are going to be to the point that they function, but they're not going to function to the optimal level that they should be. And so you're cutting down your oxygen levels by not doing deep breathing exercises. Trauma survivors that have asthma, yes, you may have a little bit of difficulty doing those deep breaths. But that's why you have a rescue inhaler. You need to start breathing deep. If you see somebody that's breathing and they're starting to breathe and you can see them breathing up here, and you start seeing this and see how I'm moving in here. When you start seeing that type of stuff up here, then that's how you know that person is breathing with this and they're not breathing with their belly and really filling up their lungs. That's how I can always tell when clients are dysregulated in session, because when they start breathing, I can tell because they're breathing up here. I can see their shoulders and their chest moving, versus obviously I can't see their abdomen area, but that's how I can tell that they're breathing up in this area. So if you are breathing up in that area, just take a moment. So basically what we always tell you to do is, place a hand here and a hand on your abdomen. And so when you breathe deep, we want you to fill up your abdomen area, your stomach. We want it to rise, and then hold it for a second. And then when you exhale out your mouth, I want you to blow it out slowly, nothing fast, and then you'll start hyperventilating, and we don't want panic to set in. But what you're doing is you're literally exercising your lungs, and you're filling the lungs, and you're getting your capacity of your lung level definitely set up. And and increasing. Thank you so much, Kim, for being here. It was great to see you. Um, so you're increasing your lung capacity by doing those lung exercises as well. Immunity issues. If you have a low immune system, if you're more susceptible to illnesses and things like that, if you're always sick, maybe you have your trauma is related to chronic stress. And so then it would be a matter of looking at what is causing your immunity, and things like that too, and kind of getting you on this path as well. So there's a lot of different holistic paths that you can take on your recovery journey. Um, I do a lot of essential oils. Um, I do a lot of holistic, like the coaching is more of a holistic. I do the drawing is more of a holistic. It's more of a mindful breath work and holistic all in one than with the coaching. I do again, I do the essential oils. I make a lot of my stuff, my own pain cream, all of my own, like rose water. There was a lot of other things I can't even think of, but I make all kinds of roller bottles and stuff like that too. Um, because let's be real, I don't trust big pharma. Sorry, you may, I don't. So I make all of my own stuff because I never know what's in anything. All right, so let's flip the switch and go from body to mind. And so psychological. So trauma can present itself in the psychological aspect of things. And thank you, Kim. And more of the psychological symptoms and responses. And so when I first started developing intrusive thoughts, cognitive distortions, I really thought I was, really going mental. And it really made me look like, oh my goodness, like what's wrong with me? Like, am I a lunatic? Am I losing my Am I losing my mind? Like, am I a danger to society? Am I a danger to my children, to like my husband, like whoever? And so what I started understanding is that that's what my workbook is kind of geared towards, is people that have intrusive thinking, cognitive distortions, a lot of the psychological, because that's what I dealt with. And there was other things, but that was one of the after effects that I was like, whoa, if I have this, I know everybody else does. And so I never realized it was linked to my trauma at all, until I started taking a complex trauma class. And then I started realizing, holy smokes, that's exactly what it's linked to. But intrusive memories, intrusive thoughts, or flashbacks, unwanted memories. Your intrusive thoughts are a lot of the real severe negative thinking. And it can disrupt your daily life. And so if you're having intrusive thoughts that are on a daily basis, I would suggest that if you can't control them, because a lot of times what ends up happening is our thoughts control us. We don't control them because people don't know how to control them. I was one of them. I'm still learning how to control my thoughts. And it's been almost a year, and I am getting there. It's a process that you have to learn to take them captive and not allow the reaction in your body to take place, because again, the body keeps the score. So if you're having intrusive memories like flashbacks, or if you're having intrusive thoughts, I would highly recommend that you get with a coach, a trauma coach. Or if you don't want to work with a trauma coach, that's perfectly fine. But at least a therapist of some sort, to get, to help you with your cognitive restructuring and really help you put those flashbacks into place, to help you on this healing journey. Avoidance. How many people avoid places? You avoid people, you avoid places, conversations. So avoidance is a huge trauma response. Emotional numbing. So we've talked about that. That's going back to the dissociation. Emotional numbing. That's where your emotions are so numb that you have difficulty being happy. You have difficulty experiencing pleasure. And so again, I experienced that at one point, and how I started reconnecting. I know I talk about this a lot, was through the drawing, was through the neurographica art. That is how I started connecting my emotions through my mind and body, and started feeling exactly what I needed to start feeling. Hyperarousal. Again, this is, heightened anxiety, irritability, difficulty concentrating, hyperarousal. This is where your window of tolerance. So your window of tolerance may not be, may be small, or it may be big. But if your window of tolerance is small with your hyperarousal, absolutely. And that is another trigger, triggering trauma response. When we have a response, so all of this goes together. It's interesting because if you have an intrusive thought, that sends our anxiety through the roof, because it's that thought process that's sending our anxiety through the roof. So then our anxiety shoots up. We have excessive nervousness, heart palpitations, and then our hands start sweating. And then we become irritable. And then in the midst of all that, we have difficulty concentrating. And here's why. It all goes back to the prefrontal cortex. When you are triggered, your prefrontal cortex shuts off. It shuts off. So if you're in a hyper arousal state, hyper vigilant type state, and you wonder what, man, I can't concentrate, or, oh, I'm triggered, but I can't remember my coping skills. That's why, because your prefrontal cortex shuts off. And so in that moment, when you are triggered and that happens, a lot of times we just start like yelling and screaming. And my husband and I had a discussion. I was going to say an argument, but I'm just going to say it was a discussion, because it really wasn't an argument, because he didn't understand how these types of things, how it was an after effect of trauma. And so when I would become triggered, I would just scream and holler, and I would do this and that, da 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 da. I've gotten a lot better, but I started realizing what my triggers were. And so in that moment, when I'd start doing that, it would kind of be like I'd flip out and not even realize it. So that, not saying that that's the case for everybody, so don't use that excuse. So that was just the case for me, and I'm working on that as well. Negative thinking. Negative thinking is where you, again, you have negative thoughts about yourself. So you might start thinking bad about yourself, and then the shame and guilt and unworthiness start arising. And so now all of a sudden, the negative thinking, negative thoughts start coming into play, and then you're like, holy smokes, what's going on? When in fact, if you would have just learned to take that thought captive and learn the cognitive restructuring of what to do, you could save yourself that shame, guilt, and the unworthiness that you may be feeling at that time. Not that it's that easy, but we work on those types of things. And so if you get a negative thought, it's learning to say, I'm not going to allow you to control me. I'm going to control you, and say, you know what? If the inner critic, if that negative thought says something, it's learning to do critical thinking, but it's a matter of doing it within a second to get your brain to switch that negative thought into a positive one and be on your way. And sometimes you start doing it to where your brain automatically does it. That's what's happening to me now. I'm to the point now, if a negative thought comes into my mind, that my brain is automatically switching to something positive, and just be like, yep, nope, you're out of here. So I'm blowing you on that. You're a leaf in my hand, and you're out blowing away in the breeze somewhere. Mood swings. Mood swings are huge. Now, I'm not talking about bipolar, borderline personality disorder. Again, I'm not a doctor when it comes to that, but there are many people, including myself, that are misdiagnosed, that have mood swings. And people and doctors will say, oh, you got bipolar, you got borderline personality disorder, because they don't know the connection between trauma and those. I was one that was misdiagnosed of having bipolar and borderline personality disorder. And as I started working on myself, I realized that I don't have either of them. And so mood swings, it changes. Your mood can change in an instant. And here's why. If you have triggers, your mood's going to change because your body is becoming dysregulated. So now you're going to become angry or sad. And so it's a response to the stress, it's a response to the triggering, it's a response to the trauma that the body remembers. Social withdrawal, kind of the same thing. So social, You don't want to go out and do anything. Maybe work is difficult. You kind of hibernate yourself, isolate yourself, and things like that too. And so those are some of the things of how it presents itself psychologically. And then I was trying to think of what else. And then I think it's more or less I had to think like the cognitive portion of it, which is the psychological. But well, yeah, of course they do. This is, and you're right, because sorry, wrong one. They got to have all those disorders so they can push all the medications, and absolutely they will. And this is just something, now that you said that. So everything, even like bipolar, schizophrenic is definitely one that is not on, that is not a trauma response, or, from trauma, but or associated with trauma. I mean, it could be, but I think that's more genetic, is that. But I would say like your bipolar, your anxiety, depression, borderline personality disorder, your ADD, ADHD, all around those lines of what's going to end up happening is that when complex trauma gets on the DSM-5, which it probably will, pretty soon, all of those diagnosis codes are going to be probably gone. I'm not going to say they're going to be admitted. They might be omitted, because what's going to happen is this complex trauma is going to come in and literally take all of that away. And so they can still prescribe medication, but now they're dealing with all of that as a whole. Do you see what I mean? So complex trauma would be your diagnosis, but the anxiety, the ADD, the ADHD, would all be your symptoms of complex trauma. So do you see? So we as coaches, we don't just look at your symptoms, we look at what is the root cause. So if you're coming to me with complex trauma, then obviously that I know that there was a traumatic event. And so we don't go back and talk about the traumatic event. We go and we start healing, how we can heal you and how we can help you repair and heal, so you can overcome those challenges associated. So then what we do is we look, and as we're healing your diagnosis, it starts healing each of the symptoms, because we're working on the mind and the body. A lot of people don't understand, but anxiety will fuel anything. Anxiety will fuel your negative thinking. The negative thinking will fuel your anxiety because you start believing it. The cognitive distortions, when you start having cognitive distortions, it can fuel your anxiety and send it up to a huge level, to where all of a sudden your brain is taking over and your mindset is taking over, and it's disrupted. And now before you know it, you're having a full-blown panic attack or anxiety attack all over one thought. And so it's learning to really sit and say, I need to control my thinking. I need to hold those thoughts captive. That's what it's all about. And when you learn to start doing that, when we learn to start working in the psychological, which is the brain, and the physiological, which is the body, when we start to work both of those together, because again, the body keeps the score. We can't just work in the body, because if we just work in the body, what's going to come up here? What's going to come on in the brain? So we have to work together. If it's happening in the body, what's happening in the mind? What is coming up for you? Okay, that's coming up for you. Let's work on a solution. What is the solution that we can work on? So that's how we work in coaching. And so we work both ways. We work, psychological and physiological together, because the trauma stays trapped in the cells. And so not only do we do that, but we bring in all the healing strategies: breathing, mindfulness, art, expressive art. We do critical thinking, somatics, trauma-informed movements, progressive muscle relaxation. Some people like NLP. I don't like hypnosis. That is something, even as a Christian woman, even when I was younger, it never worked. Even when we sat in seminars, or whatever those, not seminars, but in school, and they would do, I can't think of what they are, like that's my brain, whatever they were, but and we would sit in and they would bring in a hypnosis person, and it never worked for me anyway. But there's those types of things, massage, hiking, solo travel, um, coloring. So there's so many different healing modalities that you can do. And so it's releasing the trauma, not only from the brain, but from the body. You can't just do traditional talk therapy, traditional coaching without having a side door modality: dancing, fishing, kayaking, um, um, archery. There's so many different things. Assemblies, that's the word I was looking for. Sorry for when I was in school. Assemblies, I was like, oh, it would come to me eventually. There you go. And so there's so many different things that you need to do hand in hand together. You can't just do one. You have to do others. You have to do other things together. You'll never get anywhere. I've spent 25 years. I loved my therapist. I spent 25 years in therapy off and on. I absolutely loved my therapist. She was magnificent. But when I asked her if she knew what complex trauma was, and she told me no, I knew then and there that that I had to end my sessions with her, because complex trauma was totally different than PTSD. And so when I started getting into my certification, and I started realizing that, when trauma sits in the body, which is in the physiological and the cellular level, not just in the brain, I knew that I had to, go deeper. So as of today, I believe I have, I don't know, 5 or 6 certifications. I'm waiting to get my certification through my neurographic art. I'll be a neurographic art specialist. And then my other certification I'm working on is to work with teens, adolescents. It's actually adolescents and family. What is it? Adolescents and family trauma specialist is what I will be. So I'll be able to work with adolescents and family and help them on, teens and their mental health challenges and things like that, if I choose. And so my story is very impactful, but where I am today is very rewarding, very impactful. And so, again, if there's anything that I can do, that I would help each and every one of you in any way that I can, any way, shape, or form. So do we have any questions at all? And so one of the things that I do want to bring up is that we have a conference. It's our global virtual mental health and trauma conference coming up on February 21st and February 22nd. You can register. I will put the link in the chat, and then I'll put it up, riseupfromtrauma.com. So our website is riseupfromtrauma.com. As of right now, we have 3 keynote speakers. I believe it's 27 workshop and breakout sessions. Workshops are more for your educational purposes. Breakouts are your more, breakouts are more of your educational. Workshops are more of your hands-on. So we'll have 27 of them. And then we will have 15 pre-conference sessions, which means leading up to the conference in the month of February, leading up to the conference, you'll have the option of attending 3 sessions a week. That will be more education, more workshops. I'm actually leading one on healing inner children, trauma survivors, and inner child. We had Mike on here a few weeks ago. He talked about the inner child, the inner critic, and we will be drawing on how to heal our inner child, inner children, and what we're looking for when we do the drawing and the healing is, what is it that your inner child needs? What is it that we're looking to bring to that inner child? Is it love? Does your inner child need a hug? What did your inner child not have as a child? Are you looking for emotional support? Those types of things. And so I'm excited to be able to offer that during that as well. So this is for the conference, riseupfromtrauma.com. And so for this one here, for my listeners, for trauma survivors, for their families, and for students. So if you know a trauma survivor, a family member of a trauma survivor, if you know a student, an educator, we are offering $100 off of our ticket prices. For any of them, you will just have to email me. And let me get you the email. And you will email me. All right. And so you will Oh, sorry. So you will email me at info@riseupfromtrauma.com, and you will just say, hey, I'm a trauma survivor. I'm a family member of a trauma survivor. I'm a student, or I'm a teacher. Um, and so we will get you a one of the codes for $100 off. If you're looking for to have services with me, I am actually offering. Make sure I can spell my thing right. If you're looking to do, yes. So I'm getting ready to offer 2 workshops. And this is a 2-part series on inner child healing. If you don't want to wait till February, when I do the one in February, it'll just be 1 part. But my workshop that I'm doing is it's a 2-part. We will do a release. And then when we get done with the release, the next session that we do, we will work on repairing the inner child, bringing in what do we need to heal and repair that relationship for the inner child. And so it's for men and women. So you're more than welcome to join. Just go to healingcanvases.com. And it should be there under like group, I believe. I'm still in the process of uploading things. And so, you can always send me a message too from there. Just tell me that you're interested. And then on Facebook, if you're on Facebook, Healing Canvases, hold on. I don't want to tell you the wrong page. Then I'll be like, holy smokes, to be going to the wrong page. So my page on Facebook is Healing Canvases for CPTSD survivors. So Healing Canvases for CPTSD survivors. So so if you're on YouTube, or sorry, not YouTube, Facebook, that is my channel or my page for Facebook. If you'd like to come and follow me, that's where I have a lot more information, a lot more things that I'm doing there and things like that too. So you're more than welcome. Do we have any questions? I just want to say thank you so much for everybody being here. Make sure that you like, share. If you're not a subscriber, make sure that you subscribe. My goal is to go live every Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I bring healing strategies to trauma survivors. I bring education, hands-on, and just keep it real. I want trauma survivors to know that they can actually overcome the challenges that they face for being trauma survivors. And I'm living proof. Matter of fact, let me just share something with you before we go. I have the ability to do the same psychological test that psychologists give their clients. And so I have, the same. And so I think I took it last year to see if I had PTSD and CPTSD, and I was on the lower level of CPTSD. And I took it last week, and I no longer have any symptoms of PTSD or CPTSD. And that's huge. Like, I don't have bipolar. I don't have any of those symptoms. I'm not autistic. I don't have ADHD. Now, I am self-diagnosing that I know I do have ADD, but I don't have any of the other things. And that's because for 3 years, I've been putting in the work, in the work of working with my coach, writing a book, doing a lot of the things that, because I want to be able to overcome this and things like that. And so don't ever let anybody ever tell you that you can't heal and recover from things, because you can. You definitely can. So if you guys are, if you pray, would you just pray for JT's family? I don't know what's going on, but just say a prayer for his family. That would be greatly appreciated. He's a wonderful YouTuber. My husband's got to meet him. He's like family. They have a close knit of a relationship in this kayak bass fishing, and so many of them are trauma survivors because they have, going over and fighting for our country and things like that too. So, if you could just keep, that family in your prayers as well, and things like that too. But if there's anything that I can ever do for any of you, please reach out. I never want anybody to walk this journey alone. And, and even not telling me your story, I don't need to know your full story. I don't need to know a lot of the details and things like that. I just want to be able to help you get from point A to point B so you can eventually get to point C, which is your healing and recovery. And so, again, don't ever let anybody tell you that you can't get there, because absolutely you can. It's changing your mindset and believing that you can get there. So, if we don't have any questions or anything else tonight, I just want to say thank you again, guys, for being here, for sticking with me. And next week, I will, put it up as far as what we're going to talk about next week. If there's any topics that you would like to, learn more about, let me know. You can, send me a message and let me know. I'd be more than happy. I know there's tons of topics, tons. We could be here for days, years, weeks, months. I don't even know, decades, talking about trauma, because there's so many different things. But if there's a topic that you're like, hey, I'm kind of interested in that, let me know. We'll bring it up. We'll talk about it and things like that too, and stuff like that. So again, thank you so much for being here. I really, truly appreciate each and every one of you. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Make sure for next Sunday that you set your clocks back, because on Monday, I want to make sure that you guys aren't late, or you're not early, and then you're not sitting around waiting for me. So just make sure that you turn your clocks back. Have a good rest of your week, everyone, and I will see you next week. Bye, guys.